First of all, thank you for being here today. For the next few minutes, we are going to have a cultural conversation. And I want this to be interactive. I am not here to teach you anything, but I'm here to only perhaps generate more questions than answers. So if at some point in time you have a question, just say, I have a question. And I'll be glad to respond to that to the best of my ability. You know, as I was driving, first of all, let me tell you that I have been preparing for this presentation for as long as I have lived. You don't have to believe me, all right? You don't have to believe me. I just know so. And as I was driving to this particular meeting, I was thinking, how can I start so that we can encourage a thought? So this is what I came up with. Throughout my life, I'm 46 years old. For many years, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to get the education so that I could be perfect. I wanted to speak perfect English. I wanted to speak perfect Spanish. I wanted to speak perfect Portuguese. My wife is from Brazil. So I wanted to be perfect in everything. I wanted to be perfect, but then I realized that I could not see my perfection because I needed glasses. And when I was 19, my hair began to disappear. So I couldn't be perfect then. All right? So then I began to understand, you know, I instead of wasting my time in terms of how to be perfect, how to be correct, how to be, you know, the best that I can be, why don't I focus on how to live as effectively as I can with the imperfections that I have? And you know, for me, that makes much, much more sense. At 46, I am learning how to appreciate the fact that if I take my glasses off, which, you know, they are prescribed by a doctor, I can only see a blurry image of you all. And that feels uncomfortable, all right? So how to feel comfortable with that thought? You know, when I look at the mirror and I look at my bald head, and I'm going to show you a picture of me with a full head of hair, all right? Just to let you know that I had hair at some point in time. But at a very early age, I realized that I had to be happy with the face I was looking at the mirror. I'm not making any points at this point in time yet. Remember, I'm not going to make any point as we go through this process. Remember, this is a conversation. I will be talking to a group, but I will be addressing you individually, all right? As if you were my best friend, and we had a conversation about life itself. So I am not perfect by any means at all. I'm just here being as effective as I can in order to deal with the problems of life, because that's something that I learned a few years ago. So this is Mexico, all right? This is my country. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of wonderful stories about the Aztec people, the Mayan people. Since I was a little kid, I loved Mexico because it reminded me of a seahorse. I grew up next to the ocean. So my country was like, yeah, that's right. It makes sense to me. In Mexico, we speak more than 100 different languages. Spanish is not our native language. It was imposed, just like religion itself. There are many tribes who speak different languages, dialects, and Spanish, but Spanish is our official language. But there are many tribes that do not speak Spanish. From a very early age, we believe that, and it is taught in public school systems across Mexico, we believe that, our ancestors came from somewhere in Tibet, Russia, Mongolia. And at that point in time, they were able to walk the Bering Strait. All right? So they entered, that was the gate, they entered into North America. Some of them decided to stay in Alaska, somewhere over there, in the North Pole. Some of them walked into Nebraska, some others walked into Mexico, some to Central America. The Incas went down south. But this is where we believe we come from. The Aztec people. Apparently, at some point in time, and this is taught in public school systems, at some point in time, the people from the Midwest, all right, talked to each other and they said, well, it is about time for us to build ourselves homes and establish ourselves cities. So what should we do? Well, one of them said, well, let's talk to our gods. And for clarification purposes, our gods are the sun, the trees, the air, the stars, the ocean, the water. Those are our gods. So we talk to nature itself. And nature itself, including the sun, which is the creator of all things. They said, well, wherever you find an eagle holding a serpent on top of a cactus, that's where you are going to establish your city. So that's what they did. They found this eagle holding the serpent on top of a cactus right in the middle of a lake. The old Tenochtitlan. How many of you have been in Mexico City? Yes. Mexico City at some point in time was that, surrounded by lake at the center. It was filled with the rocks and stones and ruins from the old Aztec Empire, once the Spaniards showed up to the New World. But anyway, the Aztec people began to build their empires. They didn't have a city. They didn't have a village. They had an empire. When you think of an empire, what comes to your mind? Anybody? Networks. Yes. What else? Rulers, networks, power. More than anything else. So here it is. They build a powerhouse. It was surrounded by water, and the only way you could enter the empire or the city was through these tiny little, paths that took you to the main land. So here it is, another drawing, and that's what it looked like, according to a famous Mexican painter who did a lot of research on this particular subject. Pretty, isn't it? Colorful. When I look at it, I think, wow, there's nothing today in 2017 that I can compare it to this. Of course, there are a few buildings in Dubai that I kind of like, but nothing to this extent. We're talking about hundreds of years ago. And these are people who build these by using computer stuff or iPhones or iPads. No, these were people who built these little empires with their brains, networking systems, collaboration, communication with nature, and understanding the solar system. If you were to stand in one of these little homes of the Aztec people, this is what you would find. This is in Mexico City, by the way. Okay? Once you step before these monuments, there's nothing that can really take you away from the awe moment in terms of saying, wow, do we build things like that? We do. We were mathematicians, we were businessmen, businesswomen. We were astronomers, we were doctors. We were everything that you think you know today, all right? It feels to a certain extent that we are going backwards. To me, remember, I'm not here to make any sense. If there's anything that I say to you today that is of value, adopt it and take it with you. But for me, it feels like we're going backwards. Everything that has been done, everything that has been seen, it's already been done and seen before. Then we go to the nice little Aztec calendar. Have you seen this before? Scholars, scientists are still trying to figure out this calendar. But it's not just a simple calendar, it is a perpetual calendar. That's what really, impresses me. This thing here tells you exactly when spring, summer, fall and winter will come, so that we can plant accordingly. We are still figuring out what is going on with that particular stone. And after that, what do we have? The encounter. The day when the Spaniards showed up with La Niña, La Pinta, La Santa Maria, and all of a sudden we have horses, and all of a sudden we have iron, and all of a sudden we had chickenpox, and all of a sudden we have the common flu, and all of a sudden entire tribes were wiped out from the face of the earth. Entire tribes. I'm talking about millions of people who disappeared. They left the ruins. Sometimes I wonder, how come we have ruins? These are beautiful ruins. Well, people fled. Disease, death was right amongst these empires. So they had to go away. They had to flee. They had to go to the mountains. They had to hide. And from there on, everything changed. Language, religion, perspective of life. So we had to learn how to live with our new reality. That happened in Mexico, that happened in Central America, that happened in South America. But anyway, I wanted to give you a little bit of a historical background in terms of where I come from. And later on, I'm going to tell you why that's important to me. But now let me transport you to the present time. This is my hometown, right there. On the one side, you have the Gulf of Mexico. Beautiful ocean, vast in expansion. Every day, I would run to the Gulf of Mexico and stand right there. My home is somewhere over here. All right? So it took me only a couple of minutes to run to the ocean and stand there and breathe and be in contact with nature and forget about my problems. All right? After school, my friends would go to the river, which was on the other side, and we would play for hours. But today I'm here in Lincoln, Nebraska. All right? Let me introduce you to my family. This here, she is my grandmother, Petronila. She didn't speak Spanish. She spoke Zapotec from a Zapotec tribe in southern Mexico. That man next to her is Rios Pohirieth. That's why my last name is difficult to pronounce because it's French. His father came from Nice, France to build the railroad tracks for the Mexican government. And then he decided, he loved it. He loved it in Mexico. He married an indigenous lady like my grandma Petronila. He learned how to speak Spanish. He learned how to speak Zapotec. And then he said to his family in France, forget about me. I'm staying here. His family would come to Mexico to visit him and his family, all right? His family said, let's go. I'll take you and your family, new family, to France. He said, no, I'm going to stay here. And that is the offspring of that marriage. Rios Pohirieth. He spoke French, he spoke Spanish, and he spoke Zapotec. That was the way he was able to communicate with my grandmother. That little girl in the middle is going to become an important piece in my life. Her name is Priscilla. I introduce to you my biological parents. That's my mother. And that's my father. My mother's name was Reinalda. And my father's name is Oscar. So I am Oscar Jr. My aunt and uncle on each side. And this is the wedding day. It is not a funeral, all right? It is a wedding day. Believe me. I'm telling you, I look at the picture and I get depressed myself. So all my mother's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, they're all in that picture. And I wonder why it's so sad. You know, I asked my mother, well, not my mother, I'll tell you in a little bit, but I have asked family members, you know, what's going on? Well, they look at me, and this is something that I have known, you know. We can only enjoy life so much, all right? Because tomorrow, after this party, the reality will hit. And we hope that by not smiling too much the transition to tomorrow will be a little bit softer, nicer. That's my mother, pregnant. I was to be born 3 months after that picture was taken. That's what my father says, all right? They loved each other very much. But unfortunately, my mother died giving birth to my third sibling. She was diabetic, type 1. So she went into a coma. And living in a rural Mexico, small village in southern Mexico, they could not take my mother fast enough to the hospital. Anyway, so my father became depressed. My father went into a deep depression, and he left. In that process, he talked to his sister, Priscilla. Remember that little girl? That's Priscilla, 22 years old, and that's her husband, Florencio, 23 years old, newlyweds. They had just gotten married 2 or 3 months before everything happened. And so they had to decide whether to have babies of their own or to adopt my sister and I. So they decided to adopt my sister and I because my father was not functioning. He was not being effective in dealing with problems of life, all right? And that's all right. That's all right. So that's me. Remember that full head of hair? I looked at that picture often. So that's me. That's my aunt and uncle's house. You know, right before that. That's after they picked us up from my father's home, and they took us into their home. That's my sister Olga. And that's the backyard, and those are the toys that we played with, and that's right next to the ocean, and that's the environment in which I was brought up. Here's me. You know, I dressed up for that picture. I usually didn't have underwears. I'm not kidding. I think I was 7 when I first wore underwears. Because, I mean, kids running around. I mean, 110 during summertime. It is hot, and that's my sister. We are feeding the turkeys, chickens and rabbits at some point in time. We had coconut trees all around that place, and that's my uncle. He was taking a break during the siesta time from 1 until 4. All right, he got up at 8 o'clock in the morning. He would go to work and then come back home at 1 o'clock with everybody else. He would take a break, just relax, and then at 4, he would go back to work and then end his journey at 8 o'clock. And that's me. You know my father, well, my adopted father, Florencio. He was a salesman for a long time, and he sold encyclopedias. He sold books. And I remember my mother, Priscilla, saying to my father, Florencio, you know, Florencio, you are just crazy. You know, no one in this village wants to buy any books. They want to buy food. What are you doing? Wasting your time. And he would say, you know, education is the equalizer for all cultures. If we could only read, our minds would expand. He would say that. And thanks to him, I'm here today speaking to you. He would bring all of the books that he had sold. He would wait a day before delivering them. And then he would tell my sister and I, sit down here in the kitchen and read as much as you can, because tomorrow you will not have a book. So read. So here's my sister and I trying to read, you know, stuff, philosophy, medical terminology, law. I mean, it's like I hated it. I'm just going to be honest. I didn't like the idea of reading because I didn't understand anything. And my sister, we would just play games as we read. But he believed in education. Every penny that he made, he paid for my private education. So that was my uniform. I didn't have a tie for little ones, so I borrowed my dad's tie because at school they wanted us to wear a tie. All right, so here I am. This is my mother, Priscilla, taking that picture before walking 2 miles to the school, that nearest school, and that's my home. And that's me, 4th grader, and this is the time when I realized that life was gonna be weird. Before that, it was so pretty, so cool. I ran behind the butterflies. I loved a tiny little flower that my mother always had in the backyard. I would run to the ocean and play with my friends. But at that point in time, it's like everything hit me all of a sudden. It was a picture day. The people who took the picture came inside that classroom, and I noticed that they talked to my teacher, and all of a sudden, all the kids were lining up to have their picture taken. And here I am sitting right next to the teacher and saying, I am not going to do that. And she says, but why not? Well, I just don't want to do that. I'm not going to have my picture taken. So she approached me. She knew my family, and said, you know, Oscar, I totally understand. Just get it over with, all right? Don't fight it. I liked my teacher. I thought she was the prettiest. So I said, oh, sure. I'm going to do it for you. So I said, the photographers try to make me laugh, try to tell me jokes of some sort, and I'm thinking, and I can vividly go back in memory during that time, and I'm thinking, okay, you're going to take my picture, but I'm not going to give you my smile because I own that smile. So, after a few weeks, they came back to school and with all of the pictures, and they give a sample to each one of the students so that they can look at it, so that they could get excited and then go home and then purchase a bunch of pictures. When I looked at that, I'm like, that's pretty cool. I like my hair. I like my eye. It's a little bit crooked, but that's okay. You know, there's a mole. I mean, I looked at it carefully, and when I looked at it, I liked it. I grabbed that picture, and I ran home with it. I knocked at the door, and I said, Mom, look at my picture. And my mom looked at me, what are you doing here? And what are you doing with that picture? I'm like, I wanted to show you, Mom. Let's go back to school, all right? She grabbed me by the hand very patiently, and we went back to school to turn that picture back. The teacher looked at my mom and said, you know what? Keep that picture. I think you guys are going to enjoy it for a while. So that's that. So what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say, and I'm going to try to speak to the best of my ability, is that each one of us has a story, a life story. Allow me the opportunity to show you who I am. Just for a minute, allow me the opportunity to touch you. All right? And I believe that we can begin to communicate. I believe that we can do something as a team. I believe that we can find our imperfections and live with it. But without allowing you the opportunity to see me, we are not going anywhere. And why? And what do I mean by that? I fake so much stuff that I'm tired of faking it. I fake every day. This dress is fake. You know where I come from. You know where I live, my friends. This is uncomfortable. Why then do I have to fake who I am? I breathe, I get up in the morning, I need to speak perfectly correctly. I have to be politically correct. I have to really be perfect in everything that I do. And as an immigrant, I have to be triple better than everybody else so that I can be noticed. Enough of that stuff for me, okay? You do not have to believe me. I'm just sharing with you because I'm done. I'm done with this whole idea of being perfect. Just, here it is. This is me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to play a song for you right now. And that's the gift that I was telling you about. You know, at this age, I began to learn how to play these instruments because I noticed that through music I could talk. Through music I could speak. Through music I could share my feelings with anybody and not be judged by the sounds that I made. I am not from the Andes. I am not from Peru. I know someone who's from Peru here, and she's a great dancer, by the way. I know she's not going to like me after this. This is called some points, all right? And this is a creation from the Inca people. And I'm going to show you a little bit of all of these instruments so that you can have an idea. The nice thing about this instrument is they come in different sizes, all right? So here it is. This is the smallest size of panpipes that I have. It becomes annoying after playing it for 500 hours, all right? So we go into the living room and we say, Mom, Dad, look! We go into the kitchen, Mom, look! Once it becomes annoying, we take that instrument away, and then they graduate, all right? And they graduate, and then we give them this other instrument, all right? More complex. Once we get good at this, what do? We take that instrument away, and that's when we jump to this size, all right? Once we get good at this, what do? We go to the next level. And I'm getting dizzy. Once we get good at this, we jump to the next level. And this is the big mama. Yeah, this is awesome. Anyways, so I have all kinds of cool instruments. Look at this one here. This is the flute of the Andes. It's got this cool sound. You know, I would grab my flute, I would run to the ocean, and then I would play, and let me tell you, I was out of here. You know what I mean? It was so cool. So, here's another cool instrument. You know, today we have cell phones. Back in Inca times, we had cell phones. Do you want to hear it? Yeah. Are you guys ready? Just kidding. This was a precious item for a king back in Inca times. Why is that? Because they created war with this thing. They call people to war. They call people to gather together. They call people for ceremonial purposes. But they had a system. All right, they bended the air within this shell, something like this. That's how they would communicate something. All right. There. I'm going to show you one last instrument. This is my favorite instrument. My mother didn't have enough money to buy me iPads or Nintendo games. But she always had money to get me a water bird. So, here, this is how it works. Without water, this sounds like this. Like seagulls. That's what they sound like. Then, if you put water in it, you put water in it, this is how it sounds like. So I would run around the neighborhood like crazy with this thing in my hand, and I would not care. I would not care. You know, it sounds like when I was little, I knew that I didn't have to be perfect. in order to fit in. When did I forget that? I felt like I was flying. And that was okay, and I was happy with that. All right? I would run like I was on top of a mountain, and I was fine with that, even when everybody else didn't approve of that. So when did I forget that I could be happy by myself, all right? Doing crazy stuff by myself. What's my point? I have no point. These all are from Peru, Bolivia. The Inca people created this. All right? But later on in the next few minutes, how much time do we have? I just don't want to keep you guys longer than you need to. Could somebody, when like, please, you go like that, that you only have like 10 minutes, because I would like some time for questions and answers. It will make sense once I'm done, all right? Oh, that's an ugly picture of me. But I still have hair. This is during the time when I had to enroll for the Mexican Army for 1 year. That wasn't pretty. And that's the last university ID that I had right before I came to the United States. I was going to school to study mechanical engineering. So I studied for a year, and I didn't pass many of the classes because the textbooks that we were reading were in English. How ridiculous is that? They were in English. We didn't have anything better than that. So if we had to understand the concept, we had to read these books in English. So I flunked every class. So at that point in time, and of course, so that was one of the reasons why I came to the United States, all right? One of them. Number two, misery. I knew that after school, I wasn't going to have many opportunities to find a job. My parents needed help. So I came to the United States, all right? My parents gave me all of their savings account, which was in the amount of $300. And I ran out of them. I ran out of money in Lincoln, Nebraska. Remember that Greyhound bus station on P Street? I think I had, I got a ride from a church organization, all right? And from here, I was going to go to Ohio because I had a friend in Ohio who was going to give me board and room and all that good stuff and work. So I had only $150 in my pocket. I took it to the counter, and I didn't say anything because I didn't speak a word of English. So I had the address. I showed it to the lady, and the lady, I think she said, "I'm sorry, but that's not going to cut it." So I took my money back. I didn't even know how much I had. I didn't know how to count. How ridiculous is that? So I took the address, I took the money, and it was March, and it was snowing. And I had a red shirt with a big heart that said, "I love Veracruz. Veracruz is my home state." That my mama gave it to me as a souvenir. I was freezing. A Nebraska lady came. She looked at me. It seemed to me as though she was watching me from the beginning. And when the time came, she took her big Husker red dawn feather coat, and she put it right like that. And I think what she said was, "You take it, son. You are going to need it more than I will." That random act of kindness is what made me be here today. That random act of kindness is what made me determine that this was going to be a good place for me to continue my living. She was just there. Was she trying to be perfect? I didn't feel like that. She was just trying to be herself. She was trying to be effective at what she was doing at that point in time. Anyway, enough of that story. My name is Rios Pohirieth. I am a cultural specialist for Lincoln Public Schools. I serve in the capacity of cultural specialist and bilingual liaison coordinator. I have worked for this district for the past 19 years. And in 19 years, I have been able to gather enough information so that I can be not perfect. Okay? 19 years so that I can learn how not to want to be perfect. Because as soon as I believe I am perfect, I am better, I am correct, and you are not, I will not be as effective, and I will not stand here next to you because I am better than you. I am perfect. I don't need to hear you or see you because you are not. This is what we have up until today, all right? From 1985, we had 101 students in our ELL, English Language Learner team or program, and this is today, 3,000 and something. I cannot even see those numbers there, but that's today. So it has grown dramatically. But as I was looking at this graph yesterday, I realized that every 5 years, there is a major change in what happens in the world. I mean, just look at it. Of course, Lincoln Public Schools has not studied that, but it just caught my attention because I speak to this for a long time. And then I went and did some research, and this is when, the Bosnian and the Croatian war started right here. Then the Vietnamese immigrants, they have always come to the United States as refugees. They continue. Then we had El Salvador, Central American turmoil right over here during this time. We had an influx of Sudanese, Arabic, and right here, this is when we had the genocide in Africa, in Sudan, Somalia. So it's like, pretty quickly, I'm just talking about this. So this is the population that we work with. These are the languages that we speak within Lincoln Public Schools. Arabic, 1,415 students. So these are all the languages. We either have one or more, but we count them too. Here's the next page. It's going to be a little bit difficult for you to take a look at it, but I can provide you with this information if you want to. This is all in LPS information. See? Spanish, 2,460. These are the students that we serve, the students who are learning English as we speak, all right? Nuer, 279. And Vietnamese, 724, with a total of English speakers of 33,761, and the population within Lincoln Public Schools is 40,972 students. Does that make sense? Kind of. But I thought it would be important for you to see the diversity in which you live. Why is it important for me to bring up this information? Because we are not alone. 60 plus different ethnic groups with 60 plus thousands of single stories, like mine that I just showed you. But the fact that I am Mexican means that every Mexican is like me. No, never. I am the only Mexican bald with glasses man who plays Andean music that you will ever meet. Oh, I like that. I'll remember that one. And these are the bilingual liaisons with whom I collaborate. I oversee the work of 23 bilingual liaisons. And these are the people who have changed my life for the past 19 years. Am I making sense? These are all Latino bilingual liaisons. They come from Mexico, from Colombia, from Argentina, from southern Mexico, northern Mexico, from Central America, from Peru. All right? And then we have our Arabic, Sudanese Arabic speakers. Then we have our Kurdish or Nuer bilingual liaisons. We have our Karen bilingual liaison, or Russian and Vietnamese bilingual liaisons. I have the privilege to be challenged every single day by each one of them. The way I communicate with Pewamu and Wawamu is totally different than the way I communicate with Yum. The way I communicate with Yum has to be totally different than the way I communicate with Zainab. The way I communicate with Zainab is totally different than the way I communicate with Mohammed Al-Najam. So I have to code switch, culturally speaking, every time I meet a human person. I guess the idea behind me showing you this picture is the more equipped I am to see a human person and be able to have the affinity enough for me to suspend everything that I know for a minute so that I can touch that human person, it just makes my day a better one. And they are the people who have helped me how to do that. Our greatest challenge. I think this is hopefully making a little bit of more sense. Our greatest challenge is understanding the human perspective. What do you see? Because I want to see it. Hopefully, by my presentation here today, you will be able to see what I see, in the hopes that you will not be afraid of me, in the hopes that you will be able to understand that I am a human person as imperfect as the sun. Why did I say that? Do you think the sun is perfect? The sun brings life through chaotic combustion. Chaotic, my friends. It's not perfect. It works perfectly, right? So, we struggle. This is our struggle. Right now, today, as we work with human beings, students and their families, we see them with a little bed, with a little backpack, filled with emotional and painful events that are heavy and traumatic. But one of the challenges that I see working with 23 bilingual liaisons is the fact that we do not speak the language when it comes to mental health. Every one of the families that we serve has an understanding of mental health that is different from the Western society. And I am pretty much done in a little bit, okay? The whole idea behind communication is this, fairly ridiculously simple. Affinity, you love somebody. Well, I mean, the good way, all right? You love somebody, affinity, I want to meet you, I want to get to know you, I want to learn about you, I am excited about meeting with you, doing something, collaborating with you, affinity. Once you have affinity and you have allowed yourself the opportunity to meet somebody else, then you go into the process of real communication. I believe I am being real today. All right? There's real communication. Once a real communication takes place, there's a communication going. But if you have these 7 steps in mind, if you understand these 7 steps, your communication with any human person will be simply unbelievable. Your connection with them, the way they are going to look at you, the way they are going to treat you, the way they are going to be next to you and say, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding where I come from, without saying a word. So personhood, just being a human person who understands changes of life, skills, being able to adapt, make choices, plan, ethnic identity, ethnicity, simply meaning this right here. This is the perfect example of identity right here. You speak a language. You all live in Nebraska, perhaps, all right? But there's a group, I include myself in this group as well, because after 27 years of living in Lincoln, Nebraska, I have learned a few tricks, all right? I have learned how to eat Burger King, McDonald's. I see some faces, I'm just kidding. I remember the time when I ran out of money, $150 in my pocket. I walked and walked and walked, and I ended up at a Ranza's restaurant. I went into the Ranza restaurant that is located, and I can tell you exactly where it is, by Holmes Lake. You know Van Dorn? I went in there. I didn't speak a word of English. It was around 4 or 5 o'clock. There was a huge line of Nebraska football players or fans, better said, not players, but. And here I am trying to communicate. I didn't speak a word of English. I grabbed my $150. I put it on the counter. There was a huge lit up, a menu. I'm like, I couldn't say a word. Anyway, the lady gave me a Ranza sandwich, and for a drink, you know what she gave me? Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper, let me tell you, tastes like laxative. All right? And I threw that huge, large pop that they gave me, and the Ranza sandwich, I thought it was the weirdest thing I have ever eaten. My hands filled with oil. I'm like, no, I'm not eating this. I only had the fries. Okay? So, the sameness of a person or thing at all times, in all circumstances. Sameness. All of these are the same cultural background, Inca created. But each one of them, and this is the point, each one of them has a unique quality of sound, a unique perspective. And when they come together, let me tell you, the music that is brought up is beautiful. We have to understand a religious perspective. It is important because that's how we see the world. That's how we survive. If we do not speak the language of someone who understands or someone who wants to pray for you before you start talking, I have had families. I have visited families who say, Oscar, I'm going to pray for you so that you can continue with your work. I better listen. And I better stay there comfortably if I am going to be or make an impact in the life of that person. We don't have very much time. Let's go into this.
Dead is regarded as a time where the dead can come alive again. The dead is nothing we have to be afraid of. It's just part of life that we have to face. And in Mexican culture, that has become actually really important in the way we perceive life.
Day of the Dead is a festival, and in that sense it's very much a celebration, and I suppose that is something that appeals to European and North American people, because that's not the way that we understand death. Death is, for us, a sad moment. We do remember our dead, but we remember them in times of solemnity.
I can see how this kind of tradition gets connection with other people. This celebration is a demonstration of generosity, with richness of color, with the sound, with the air, with the paper that moves, the talk between all the family, not with sadness, not like someone that we lost, but like someone who is still with us.
It's a multi-sensory experience, I think, both for the people who make the altar and for the dead that visit. People go on journeys with the offerings and take them to the burial places. And they're sort of exploring this idea of the boundary between the living and the dead. It's a liminal place, and liminal places often need catalysts to bring things closer together. They eat together and, of course, listen to music and remember fondly their dead.
What is interesting in this celebration is not that the dead is coming to eat or is coming to drink on the night, because we cannot see them. The grandmother says that they take the spirit of things, and they take the love of us.
It's really impressive how the atmosphere becomes really nice. The smell of all the flowers that have been turned apart to create that atmosphere actually makes you feel that you are going through something else beyond life. It's conveyed by the flowers, and it's really weird because it's the same smell, but it can tell you so many different things.
Day of the Dead as well is something to show us how the colonizations and the changes in the history of a country may include the new things, but preserving tradition.
What we're really talking about is what you see in a lot of cultures, which is material culture or images and ideas being transferred through time, obviously evolving as they come into contact with other cultures. So Mexican culture is very much a mix of the different pre-Hispanic Mesoamerican cultures that existed before the Spanish conquest and all of the influence that came from Europe, which wasn't just from Spain.
I appreciate the sense of celebration. To be able to celebrate even the dead. People continue alive on the memories of others. And I think memories is really important in a world where it's so easy to forget.
That's the Day of the Dead. I remember when I was in grade school, my teacher would give me a sugar skull. And she would give a sugar skull to each one of my classmates. And then she would give us sugar coloring, so that we could decorate the skull. And at the end, we were to write our names on the forehead of this little skull. And I didn't like it, all right? I would look at it, I would be frightened by it. But the best part of it all is that at the end we would get to eat the sugar skull. So then my perspective of this whole thing would change immediately. But this is only one cultural aspect. Only one. That if we do not understand it, we are not going to be able to communicate with a Mexican family. As soon as you walk into their homes and you see an altar of that sort, it's just not going to make sense. As a matter of fact, it could be disturbing. It could be, really. So what is my point? Are you going to be able to really get to know every culture, 60 plus different culture? It would take how many lifetimes for you to be able to be culturally competent or proficient? I am not here to tell you, yes, let's read books so we can become cultural proficient and cultural competent because I'm going to get you there. I would be lying. It would require many lifetimes and you being born there to be able to understand the way cultures operate. But there's one simple thing that I can give you that will help you, all right? Be yourself. It's that difficult. Be who you are, as effective as you are. Don't try to be perfect, because I will read it more than anything else. Once you start faking it, I am going to just stay as far away as I can from you. Just be yourself. Will you misspeak? Sure, tell it to me. I'll guide you through the process. I'll tell you how I feel. Yes, Mexican Day of the Dead, I'll tell you all about it. If you say something a little bit wrong about it, talk to me about it. I want to know that you want to know. And if I say something wrong about the Nebraska Huskers, teach me, all right, so that I can appreciate football game. Does that make sense? So we have gender. Let's understand that process. Very complex stuff to a certain extent. Male, female, transgender, bisexual. Let's understand a human person, please. I am not perfect. If I want to be effective in everything that I do with a human person, I just need to stay away from perfection. In Mexico, we look at women being in touch with nature. Women, by the fact that they create stuff with their hands, by the fact that they make babies, they bring little human persons to life. They have some sort of weird power. They do. They talk to people. They talk to the trees. They talk to nature. They talk to the sea. All right? They are too much in touch with nature. Let them be. We, men, we control nature. We control nature. All right? So do not mess with us, Mexican men, because we know how to build stuff. We build the pyramids. We control the trees. We control everything that comes through our hands. And therefore, we also control women. I have learned better. All right? What do you guys think? Give me your honest opinion. What are you thinking? What's in your mind? Is there something that you heard in these few minutes that perhaps generated some thoughts? Anybody?
We, just as regular people, tend to generalize and think about stereotypes about different people from different places, backgrounds. So like, this is an example only, like Asian people are quiet. They are like very organized, methodical. And then so they're feeling very pressure about making good in a school, getting good scores. And so when they feel a kind of anxiety about what I'm performing, what I'm doing, some of the people will say, oh, it's just because that's who you are. When do we know that's because that's part of his background, his culture, or really he's dealing with anxiety disorders, and we're just, okay, he's going to be fine. Or if a student is kind of Central America, they overcome so many things, just coming to this country, and he's defiant, doesn't want to listen to people. So he's like, he's kind of a macho guy, and he's very disrespectful to women, and he never lets you go, and he's talking all the time. And do you know more about him? It's true. You cannot just see the students because they're the bad students. These students that since middle school are carrying this label. Who has talked to the student, get to know him, get to know their stories, and see what happened in their lives that is making him or her feeling that way. When there is a connection, things might be changing.
Great observation. Anybody else? This is good. It doesn't have to be a question, but just a thought that you may have about that would be good for others to hear. Anybody? Yes, thank you.
I'm Nikki. I'm a school counselor at Mickle Middle School. So my question is, how do we begin to build the relationships and the rapport with students and families, especially when there is a language barrier, so that we can understand their personal story and journey?
Great, valid question. Does it require a lot? You know, words are the last resort for communication, and I think you know that. So what comes first? A thought. That's all. The way we think is the way we are going to express ourselves. A simple look, let me tell you, a simple look may change somebody else's perspective about you. Something that you are going to do. You know what is really nice? When I see somebody try to speak my language, you know, it may sound really weird, but as they say it, my heart is smiling. Great communication right there. We have bilingual liaisons. We can make those connections. We can help you break that barrier of language to a certain extent. But my advice to you is something that you are going to do, and this is going to sound weird, something that you are going, within your 8-hour or 4-hour or as many hours that you spend working in what you do, just hope for that magic moment. Just hope for that magic moment, which will not require an hour of your work, but only a minute. And you will change the life of a human person. Does that make sense? It's more simple to speak it like that than to actually do it. But just wait, whatever you won't even notice it. Sometimes you won't even notice it, but the intention is there. I hope that helps. Anybody else has a better idea? Yes.
I tell you, I enjoyed every bit of your program, but
Thank
can
you.
I ask you,
Sure.
when you began to play music?
When I began to play music.
Who was your teacher?
Who was my teacher? Very good. Great observation, great question. Thank you very much. I am here today because many people died behind me. In order for me to survive, my great-grandparents, many people gave their lives so that I can stay alive today. So this is what we are dealing with, my friends. I am not only dealing with my cultural Mexican perspective. I am not only dealing with that on a daily, every breathing moment of my life. I'm not only dealing with that. I am dealing with an organic body packed with knowledge that was instilled in my genetic structure from long ago. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I feel this way. Let aside my cultural perspective. I just feel this weird way today. I was 10 years old, 4th grade. When I want to play something, I would go home during the dinner time and my mother would say, just shut up. I had an urge to learn. But then I figure out that my father, my biological father, he is a professional guitar player in Mexico. He has traveled around the world playing his guitar. My great-grandpa, he was a professional guitar player as well. And at some point in time, my grandpa said, you know, Oscar, we come from families who played for kings. At that point in my life, I didn't understand that. Am I dealing with just the here and now? Just today? What happens today in my little life? No. How do I organize that information that is in my genetic structure? How do I just feel it. So how I deal with it, all of a sudden I knew that I had a talent just like every single human person in this room, has a powerful talent only if you allow it the opportunity to speak. Many of us go living a life without tapping into that amazing information. So I was 10 years old when I began how to play. And then I grabbed another instrument, and then I grabbed another instrument. Today I play 25 instruments effortlessly. That's ridiculous. Sometimes I feel weird. I grab an instrument, I play it, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Now let's give it and show it to my friends. And it's just how that works. But thank you, that's a good observation. Anybody else? That's a great question. My adopted mother, she's 82 years old, and she's here with me in Lincoln, Nebraska. I wish I brought him today. She's always asking me, Oscar, when you go out and do your thing, take me with you. And I'm like, Mom, sometimes it's a little difficult. My adopted father, Florencio and Priscilla, they're both 82 years old. They both live here. They immigrated 10 years ago when my second child was born, Maya. So it is great. And I keep in touch with my biological father. Yes, I have not seen him very much, but at least 5 times in my life I have seen him. He's still depressed, let me tell you. Not a good scenario. But anyway, if we don't have anything else, I think I will let you all go back to your homes, to your work, to your communities. Just allow somebody else the opportunity to touch your life. All right?